Thank you very much. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Attila Horváth. I serve in the Capability Development Office of the General Staff of the Hungarian Defense Forces. The Capability Development Office is the powerhouse of procurement management and technical R&D. So all the innovation General Porkolab was talking about, we put it into the hands of the warfighters. And I think I have the best talking time slot in this conference because the coffee still gives you the energy, and we have all this inspiration received from General Porkolab. About me, I'm a telecommunication engineer. I served as a network operations engineer, R&D engineer, planning officer in the general staff. Ultimately, I was a personal professional advisor of the deputy commander of the Hungarian Defense Forces. And right now, I lead a small expert group in the Capability Development Office dealing with space. And this is a very important topic, a very important field. It is disruptive, while at the same time, it is supporting militaries for like 50 years. At the same time, it is still disruptive. That's a very interesting part. And every day, during every exercise, during every planning operation, we are facing the problems that we need rules. Soldiers live by rules. And we need rules how to plan our operations, how to conduct our operations. And ultimately, the foundation of our society is the legal system. And I will present more than 10 case studies in the book chapter about how we operators feel that we do not receive enough support from the legal system. I will now just give you two. This will be a little technical. We will move away from the field of social sciences, but we will turn back ultimately. So the space legal environment, Katarzyna will talk about it more. This is just a very short summary. Practically, these 5 UN space treaties, agreements, and conventions, they are the constitution of space, the fundamental law. Everything is building on these treaties and other legal instruments. And these were created, you see, decades ago. The newest one, the Moon Agreement, it was only ratified by less than 20 countries, and other agreements have problems with implementation, so to say. Even though space is for everybody. And just for information, you are now crew of Spaceship Earth. We are in space right now. We are flying in space. This is why I brought to you these two topics, these two cases, to show how much problems we face with the disruptions going on in space technology, while at the same time, we do not even know where space is and what are space activities. They are not legally defined. So the first example is the problem of delimiting airspace, which is a sovereign volume of the atmosphere belonging to countries, and outer space, which is common heritage of all mankind. There is a technology called suborbital exoatmospheric flight or suborbital point flight operations, which I personally cannot categorize. It can be space flight because it reaches the altitudes usually associated with space flight. But they do not orbit the Earth. They re-enter the atmosphere without completing an orbit. So those functionalist scientists who define space operations by being space operations, yeah, it's interesting. Space is where space operations are done, but we don't know what space operations are. But usually they require an orbit around the Earth, and these systems do not orbit around the Earth. On the next slide, you will see a little simulation how these flights are operating. I used the SpaceX Starport network promotion video, selected 2 suborbital flights to simulate. You will see they will reach roughly 1,000 and roughly 4,000 kilometers altitude above the Earth. It is not a question, that's outer space. But still, they are not completing an orbit. If they are space flight, then some rules apply. If they are not space flight, other rules apply. But for example, if we do not consider these as space flights, then they should be operating under the regulations of the Chicago Convention of International Air Operations, but they are physically unable to comply with. You will see 2 suborbital flights. The red starts from London and reaches Dubai. The yellow also starts from London and reaches Hong Kong. This is from that promotional video. You see how many countries the flight path crosses over. Now we are reaching Hong Kong and we are there. Technically, these are similar to space launches, but they are not space launches because the intention was not to enter an orbit around the Earth. Technically, these are similar to re-entries, but these were not re-entries because we are not completing a space flight, we are completing something different. But still, we reached an operational volume that is outside the commonly understood atmosphere and outside the spatial volume where states are able to exercise their sovereignty. For example, in Hungary, we do not even have the radars to track such flights. Many countries do not even have that. To enforce rules 4,000 kilometers above the Earth, very, very few countries have the ability to enforce any rules at that volume of space. One article of the Chicago Convention enables states to require flights crossing over their territory to land at a designated airport. That's impossible in the case of suborbital flights. They are incapable of landing and then taking off again. We cannot fit these flights into any existing legal category, but this is a thriving business. There are now many business cases centered around this technological capability. We still have time to regulate these operations, but we have to start very soon. The other example will be centered around the questions of sovereignty in outer space, which under the Outer Space Treaty is a non-existent thing. There cannot be sovereignty in outer space. But at the same time, we have the spacecraft in outer space under state's control. So there is a technical capability called co-orbital formation flying, when one spacecraft flies around another one, just like aircraft flying in formation. This is called co-orbital because they commonly orbit the same central body. It will look like they are orbiting each other, but they are not. They are orbiting the same central body. They are flying independently of each other. This is a very important part. They are just quite close. Unoccupied space, where there is no spacecraft, that's common heritage of all mankind. Free for innocent passage. If I start a co-orbital operation around your spacecraft, and I do not collide with it, do not contact with it, and do not interfere with the operations, then that's innocent passage. The same innocent passage when you are walking at night on the streets and I am walking behind you with a steel pipe in my hand. I am not harming you at all, but you would not be at peace. The same way, co-orbital maneuvering can be used for many purposes. It can be used for peaceful purposes and very beneficial purposes, like on-orbit servicing, assisting malfunctioning spacecraft and recovering it for successful operations, generating money and value for the society. With the very same technology, I can disable a spacecraft. Or just being there, collecting intelligence. Collecting intelligence on the spacecraft, collecting intelligence on the operations it is doing, prepositioning my attack vehicle to strike at minutes notice. So therefore, an operator of a spacecraft, I think, would welcome a volume around their own spacecraft as a safe volume, a safe space, where they can be assured that no other spacecraft can enter, potentially causing harm. Even unintentionally harm can be done. These we can call operational safety or security zones around the spacecraft. And under some agreements, international agreements, there are such zones around spacecraft right now. For example, around the International Space Station, there are operational safety volumes where specific rules apply how you can enter such safety zones and how you must behave. But these are professional agreements between professionals. And outside parties are not bound by these agreements. At the same time, if we declare a volume around a spacecraft, isn't that sovereignty? So here is the example. Yeah, it is running. It is quite fast. Two spacecraft flying in low Earth orbit and completing one orbit around the Earth. And you can see that in a three-dimensional space, the red spacecraft is kind of like orbiting the blue one. You can see it is approaching, it is getting away, then approaching away, approaching again. You can see the charts. These simulations were generated by Systems Toolkit. That's a really good software package everybody in the space industry uses, and in military space operations we also use this for simulations. The red spacecraft was not interfering at all with the blue one. They were not contacting. It approached the blue one to like 70 kilometers, and the farthest distance was 140 kilometers. That's quite safe, but still it is there. It is doing something. It is not 400 kilometers away like if it were on the surface of the Earth, or 500. It is in the vicinity. It is doing something. And this is not some future initiative like the point-to-point flights were. This is every day in the space operations. One example is the Russian Liutenant spacecraft that was in a different orbit, in a geostationary orbit. It's an electronic warfare satellite. It approaches telecommunication satellites and listens in. It can successfully complete its operations with an approach of like 200 kilometers to your spacecraft. That is, on the one hand, quite far. So we cannot say that Liutenant is interfering with our operation. But still, it is there. It is collecting. A national security spacecraft, like a military telecommunications satellite, in that case, that intelligence collection can be quite problematic. And this Liutenant was the very reason why the French Space Command started the development of patrol spacecraft. Small satellites patrolling the space around the big national security satellites, monitoring any approaches, and it is also part of the French plans, preventing approach, actively preventing approach. Now, if you recall the cannon shot rule from the history of law, originally, territorial waters near your national shoreline were defined by how far you can reach with your shore-based coastal defense artillery. Because if someone approaches your shore and you can enforce your rules from the ground with your artillery, that is sinking the ship, that is the sovereign territory you can control. With this patrol spacecraft, in my opinion, the situation is quite the same. If there is a volume around my spacecraft and I have means to control who can do what in that volume, then it is my sovereign territory, in my opinion, but I am not a lawyer. So again, from professional necessity, we see that we need safety zones around the spacecraft to avoid misunderstandings, to avoid accidents, and to prevent hostile operations. But how to do that without breaching the Outer Space Treaty and without declaring sovereignty over a volume in space? This is again a very important question for us operators to define, because we want to operate within the legal limits. So that was my presentation, and just to summarize, in the book chapter there will be more examples about this, about flights alternating between the atmosphere and outer space, about technology development that can be weaponized, about weapons developments that can be cloaked as peaceful technological developments. And it is the request from the professional space operators community to all the professional legal community to help us by developing rules, because we need these. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you very much. And I will be here till the end of the conference and during the evening dinner. If you have any questions, I am happy to answer. And practically, yes, that was my briefing. I hope I can meet with you again and with the professionals from all your nations in exercises and meetings to exchange other views and experiences, because space is an international domain. This is why in Hungary it is managed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You cannot do anything in space alone. We need cooperation. So I hope this conference and this project also fosters this cooperation among our professionals. Thank you very much.